He disliked Jack Elam more than anyone else. Jack Elam came into the world. William Scott Elam was born on November 13, 1920, in Miami, Arizona. He was one of Hollywood's most famous and memorable character actors. Elam was interested in telling stories and performing from a young age. These interests would eventually shape his long and successful career in film and television. He joined the United States Navy during World War II, where he learned discipline and resilience. After that, he went to the University of Southern California to study acting. Elam's unique misaligned eye and other remarkable features made him stand out in Hollywood at first. Instead of perceiving it as a flaw, he made it a part of his personality, giving him a naturally scary or strange presence that became his signature on screen. Elam worked for more than 5 decades and has roles in more than 200 movies and TV shows. He became quite well known for his roles in westerns, which felt like the perfect fit for his tough, unique face and dominating presence. Movies like Once Upon a Time in the West 1968, Support Your Local Sheriff 1969, and The Night of the Grizzly 1966 helped him become known as the ultimate bad guy. Elam's characters were often a mix of scary and funny, and people were drawn to both his wicked roles and the subtle compassion he often added to them. This made him a very distinctive presence in every narrative he was in. Jack Elam was very versatile. He could easily switch between genres. He acted in comedies, dramas, and even movies for families, showing that he could do more than just play one type of role. His work with other famous actors and directors of his day showed how professional he was and how much respect he had in the business. Elam was also quite popular on TV, where he played parts in shows like Gunsmoke, Bonanza, The Twilight Zone, and The Lone Ranger. He had a lasting impact on American culture. Jack Elam played Zach Wheeler in the Texas Wheelers from 1974 to 1975. It was a short-lived yet memorable comedy show that aired on ABC. Elam played the role of a rough-edged father who had been missing for a long time and suddenly shows up in his children's lives when their mother dies. The plot was about Zach's strange way of raising for kids he didn't know very well. This offered Elam a chance to show off his comedic timing and his ability to play a character who, despite his shortcomings, had a lot of heart. The series only had 8 episodes, but it was famous for coupling Elam with future stars like Mark Hamill, who would become famous around the world as Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, and Gary Busey. Even though the Texas Wheelers had low ratings and were swiftly canceled, critics praised Elam's performance, saying that his tough personality and strange screen presence gave something special to the family-centered comedy. Elam kept trying out different kinds of roles on TV, showing that he was prepared to move away from the gritty westerns and evil characters that had defined most of his early career. In 1979, he played Frankenstein's monster in the CBS sitcom Struck by Lightning, which was a surprise role for him. This funny movie was about a scientist who finds out that his great-great-grandfather was Dr. Frankenstein and ends up living with the monster in a sequence of funny occurrences. Elam's unique facial characteristics and quirky appeal made him a perfect choice for such a strange role that combined humor with the absurdity of playing a legendary horror figure in a lighthearted sitcom. Sadly, the show never found its audience and was canceled after only 3 episodes. The other 8 episodes never broadcast in the United States. In 1980, all 11 episodes were shown in the UK, which was interesting since it gave British audiences a chance to observe Elam's strange comedy turn, which is still a bit of a mystery in his long career. Elam kept showing up in the 1990s to show off how flexible he was. He played Hick Peterson in the first season of the very successful sitcom Home Improvement. The name of the episode is Birds of a Feather Flock to Taylor in Season 1. Episode 20, Elam got to work with another Hollywood classic, Ernest Borg. The plot was about strange persons and how they interacted with Tim Allen's Taylor family in funny ways. Elam's performance reminded people that he still had a good sense of humor. For people who knew him as a scary outlaw in westerns, witnessing Elam make people laugh in a modern family sitcom showed how wide his acting range really was. Elam solidified his name for offbeat comedy with his portrayal as Dr. Nicholas Van Helsing, a self-described crazy proctologist. In the 1981 action comedy hit The Cannonball Run, Hal Needham directed the movie, which starred Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, and Farrah Fawcett. It was a crazy cross-country vehicle race with lots of slapstick humor and crazy characters. Elam's role as the strange doctor was one of the most unusual parts of the movie, and it showed how good he is at making even the smallest parts stand out. His performance was so well received that Elam played the same character again 3 years later in Cannonball Run to 1984. Once again, he wowed onlookers with his wild-eyed antics and funny unpredictability. Elam was in the movie Aurora Encounter in 1986. People often call it a weird Western, since it mixes Western and science fiction themes in a strange way. Elam played Charlie Hankins, a village drunk whose strange conduct added to the movie's strange tone. Elam had one of the most important personal connections of his life while producing this movie. He met Mickey Hayes, an 11-year-old child from Texas who had progeria, a rare disease that makes people age quickly. On the set, Elam and Hayes had a very strong friendship, even though they were different ages and had different lives. The 1987 movie I Am Not a Freak demonstrated how much the two cared for each other and how Elam's kindness and humanity shone through off-screen just as brightly as his magnetism did on screen. In a quotation that may not be true but is often reported, Elam said, "You know, I've met a lot of people, but I've never met anybody that got next to me like Mickey." The connection showed a softer, more caring side of Elam that people didn't see in his tough guy performances too often. Elam added to his TV CV that same year by co-starring in the comic series Easy Street. He played Alvin Bully Stevenson, the uncle of Lonnie Anderson's character L.K. McGuire, who was having a hard time. The program was about an unexpected living situation where Anderson plays an affluent socialite who lives her fancy home with her blue-collar relatives. This leads to a lot of funny fights. Am's character was funny since he was clumsy but lovable. Even though Easy Street didn't last long, Elam's presence made the show better, and his chemistry with Anderson gave viewers a wonderful mix of Hollywood glitter and rough-edged appeal. Elam worked alongside country music superstar Willie Nelson in the made-for-TV Western movie Where the Hell's That Gold? In 1988, the movie, which also starred Delta Burke, was a funny Western adventure with a treasure hunt, betrayals, and characters that were bigger than life. Elam's role let him go back to Western territory that he was used to, but with the funny twist that had become one of his trademarks. The chemistry between him and Nelson made the movie more interesting because both men brought a comfortable, easygoing spirit to their roles. In 1994, Elam was formally honored for his long and successful career when he was admitted into the Hall of Great Western Performers at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was now in the same league as some of the most famous people in the history of Western film and TV. The induction was an appropriate tribute to an actor who had not only made a name for himself with memorable villainous and humorous roles, but had also helped the Western genre live on. Elam's induction into the Hall of Great Western Performers was a sign of how versatile and long-lasting he was, as well as how much he changed American entertainment. People typically recall Jack Elam's lazy eye, his craggy visage, and how he could steal almost every scene he was in, whether he was a bad guy in a Western or a funny old man later in his career. But everyone who knew Elam well knew that he was a man who said what he thought without holding back. He had deep feelings toward almost everyone he worked with. Gary Cooper, the famous star of classic Hollywood westerns and dramas, was one actor who really got on his nerves. People thought Gary Cooper was one of the best cinematic actors of his time. People knew him for his modest grace, simple style, and ability to show strength with just a few words. For a lot of people, he was the perfect example of a Western hero. Jack Elam, on the other hand, thought that Cooper was practically everything he didn't like in the leading males of Hollywood's golden age. Elam thought Cooper was overhyped and that his so-called natural acting was just hanging around and muttering while everyone else did the work. As Elam once put it, Elam would regularly talk about his bad experiences with Cooper in interviews or on movie sets. "Gary Cooper never wowed me," Elam is supposed to have stated that he was always there. You'd have these amazing character performers carrying a scene and giving it their all, and Cooper would just say a line in that low voice of his, and the critics would say it was great. I never saw anything great. I observed a guy who got by looking good in a cowboy hat. Elam didn't like Cooper because he thought he didn't work hard enough. Elam said that Cooper relied on his star power, even though he worked hard to make even little parts flawless. He would often show up on set early and stay late to go over lines. "I'd say Gary Cooper without thinking twice if you asked me who I thought was lazy," Elam once said. He didn't practice. He didn't push himself. He didn't care if the scene was bright. He just wanted to finish it and get paid. In the meantime, the rest of us were working so hard that we were sweating blood. Elam also didn't like how Cooper treated other people on set. A lot of people thought Cooper was polite and quiet, but Elam thought differently. Elam said, "People said he was a gentleman. Maybe if you were a studio head or a pretty actress. He didn't care about you if you were just a working character guy like me. He hardly even looked at you. I don't respect that." Elam was a man who took pride in being friendly and open to everyone, from the biggest star to the stagehand. This kind of distance was not acceptable. Elam was probably most angry about how critics and audiences praised Cooper, even when Elam thought he was giving lifeless performances. Elam believed that Cooper's Academy Award for High Noon was one of the most undeserved awards in movie history. You could have put a cigar store Indian in that role and gotten the same performance. Elam scoffed, but because it was Cooper, everybody bowed down. I never understood it. Elam, being blunt as ever, once characterized his feelings by saying Gary Cooper was like wallpaper. He was there. He filled the space, yet you didn't notice him unless someone told you to. And yet somehow he became this giant of movies. To me, that says more about Hollywood's obsession with appearances than with talent. Despite his criticisms, Elam agreed that Cooper had his devoted admirers and that his image as the tall, stoic cowboy was something the public sought. But that didn't stop Elam from expressing his discontent. He was the American hero, certainly, Elam admitted, but only because people wanted to believe in that image. He wasn't the best actor, not by a long shot. He wasn't even the best actor in most of his movies, but he looked the part, and that was enough for the studios. In the end, Jack Elam's disdain of Gary Cooper was founded in his long-standing frustration with Hollywood's penchant to glorify leading males while disregarding the gritty, hard-working character actors who gave films their soul. To Elam, Cooper symbolized that imbalance, the unfairness of a system that rewarded looks and aura over depth and effort. And for a man like Jack Elam, who built his career on sheer dedication and an unshakable work ethic, that was something he could never forgive. Jack Elam was married twice, first to Jean Louise Hodgert from 1937 until her death from colon cancer on January 24, July 1961. Months later in 1961. August 1961, Elam married again. Then to Margaret M. Jennison, the pair stayed together for 42 years, until Jack died of congestive heart failure at their home in Ashland, Oregon, on October 20, 2003.